Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing fantastic out there. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be great, and appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. Miami Heat, of course, they are in the midst of a road trip right now. They'll be taking on the Washington Wizards. Got news today from the team that no Duncan Robinson, no Andrew Wiggins for this upcoming game. Kevin Love also away for personal reasons. Duncan Robinson is, to me, the most concerning because he's got something with his back that I can't pronounce. And he is a guy who has had back issues already, although Eric Spoelstra told reporters it's not related to last year and that back injury. You'll excuse me when I tell you that I am very skeptical on anything Miami Heat when it comes to them mentioning injuries. They are not very forthcoming when it comes to that stuff. That is their system. That is their policy. And so when I hear this stuff about Duncan Robinson, and this is from the Herald, a back issue that stems from dysfunction between the triangular bone at the base of his spine and the two large bones that form the side of his pelvis. I read all of that. I think back immediately to Mike Tyson and Jim Gray. I broke my back. What do you mean by that, Mike? My back is broken. Like a vertebrae? Spinal. That's all I think about when I read that from Duncan Robinson. And yeah, it is a bit concerning when the Miami Heat's all-time three-point leader, who, you know, is just got such a propensity to help out, do good things, connect everybody offensively, and of course can go bombs away anytime to time. To have another year, maybe dealing with a short circuit because of a back injury, going into what's kind of a contract season for Duncan Robinson. They have a situation with his deal where it could be non-guaranteed. They could deal with that. Duncan Robinson could also decide, it's one of those things where if they decide not to, I think, guarantee it, then he can go off and do his thing as far as the contract is concerned. If they do guarantee it for him, then it's about $20 million going into next year, and that's what they have to deal with his whole deal. And then you also kind of have that fit in the case. Everybody's always looked at that Heat contract scenario of what they deal with. It's one of those things where do they link that up, and then the Terry deal, that always seems like it would link together for, an expiring bigger contract if they want to do something like that. So there's that element to it as well. But just from the player standpoint, it's a bit of a concern just because this is another back issue that's flaring up for Duncan Robinson. And that's unfortunate because, they could always use him. And especially the way the Miami Heat have been the thing that's been crazy about it is you're dealing with this back injury from him and the way that the team has been shooting the last couple of games. And really this whole win streak, it's pretty wild to see that Duncan Robinson hasn't been part of some of that because normally if there's great shooting going on around town, Duncan Robinson is going to have a piece of that, but it hasn't been the case. And, you have to wonder what this is going to mean for him going forward with that whole injury thing and everything that's concerned with that. And then, of course, when it comes to next year, talking about what the Heat's plans are, as we look right now, we still don't know. The Heat are in such limbo right now because of the play-in of where their picks are going to be at. We don't know if they're going to be in a place where the Miami Heat are going to have two picks. Are they going to have one pick? Are they going to be two teams in the play-in scenario? Or are they going to be in a position where, nope, they actually have to go out there and they have to win, advance, and then win another one? Will they have two first-round picks? Will they have one first-round pick? Will that first-round pick be late? Will it be higher? What's going to happen to the Warriors pick if they don't make the playoffs in some doomsday scenario as well for them? All of these things are putting Miami in a bit of an interesting situation because things are murky out there with what the plan is going forward with this season. Like, the things that we know that they have to take care of next year are pretty much Davion Mitchell. I would imagine, want to keep him, although I don't know. There was some, I know that there was some bananas talk about, will they pull a Rodney Magruder with him? I would be very, very surprised the way that he's played, the way that he's embraced everything that is Miami Heat, how hard-nosed he plays. I think a lot of that stuff that Eric Spoelstra really loves that he and Pella have brought to the table, you got a hard time in any way, shape, or form thinking they're going to pull the Magruder move with Davion Mitchell. I don't think that's going to happen. The question is, what do you pay somebody like Davion Mitchell? I don't really know that either. When I thought of like, what does Davion Mitchell command? What does that look like on a roster, especially in today's NBA where a lot of guys make a ton of money? And nothing against it. That's just what the cap is. That's what the cap deal is when it comes to him. What does somebody offer? Somebody like Davion Mitchell. Like, what does that deal look like? Like, does it look like the old Alex Caruso? Because like Alex Caruso, defensive-minded point guard who may start for you, may not start for you, may bring in to kind of change things up. Like his deal before this last deal with Oklahoma City was like 4 years, 36. He was making like $10 million a year. It's like, all right, I can see the Miami Heat doing something like that. Now he's a guy who makes 20 plus million a year. And I can't see the Miami Heat doing something like that with Davion Mitchell. So I don't know. I don't know what the scenario is there to keep him. I mean, I guess we could look at somebody like, Caleb Martin and what they did with him this year in the hopes of keeping him around. And Caleb Martin is kind of in that realm of making like, and obviously, his agent kind of screwed the pooch, but he's making about $9 million a year. So could the Miami Heat do something like that to appease Davion Mitchell? And is Davion Mitchell going to be happy with that? I don't know. But that, I think, is the most clear-cut thing. Then you have to deal with, of course, the Tyler extension, which is going to come up in the fall. I don't know where the Heat are going to go with that, with guaranteeing, $50 a year to Tyler Hero, even though he's had a tremendous year. My thought of it is, this is at a team right now where when you lock into Bam and Tyler being your guys from a max contract standpoint, you need to be sure that those guys being locked in is it. And while, it may piss your player off, it may be one of those things where I can't imagine like day one, unless Miami gets the other guy. Like if Miami's able to somehow swing their next move, which is what I'm going to get into here in just a second of who that next guy is, unless Miami brings into the fold that third guy to go along with these things, then okay, it's more palatable to have Tyler Hero locked up, happy, all that type of stuff. But I think with things murky right now, with picks, with all of that stuff, right now I can't see Miami doing it. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I just don't think it's going to happen right this second. But we'll see. I mean, Tyler, does get a lot of love, and he has been playing awesome. He really has, turned things after getting through a little bit of a rough patch and knowing that everybody is trying to take him out. I am in no way, shape, or form saying like, hey, the Heat can live without Tyler Hero. But as we've said, like, hey, can you, and I think part of the test of this year has been, can you lock in with Bam and Tyler being your dudes, making $50-60 million a piece right now? I mean, I don't know what that's a recipe for your future as a contender right now. That test is yet to be that test is yet to be passed from them. We know that Kel'el Ware is an absolute keeper. We know that every team is in any trade talks for Miami is going to ask for him number one, and it's probably going to have to be a pretty monster player that Miami is getting back to go forth and go into that tank of wanting to deal Kel'el Ware. And then, of course, you also have to deal with Niko Jovic's situation, too. What are they going to do from his extension standpoint? Do they give him an extension? Do they have him just go into this year and then go into the whole then have to deal with restricted free agency? I think the thing that's interesting with Niko is, like, I don't necessarily think he's a guy where stats reflect exactly how effective of a player he is, but he's also a bit of a weird fit because of his size, because of the things that he's good at. And so then the question has to be asked with Miami, all right, what do we do from his standpoint as well? Do we invest in that right off the bat? What does his agent want? Because he's one of those situations where, like, if Miami can get him on a sweetheart deal, and he's not expecting like a max contract of some sort, and Miami feels like, all right, that's for what he gives us. That's good value. It's locked. It's boom. Yes, he's dealt with some fluky injuries. Definitely was a tough year with the ankle that he hurt, and this year with the wrist. It's a little Tyler-esque with like, all right, how do you predict something like that going to happen? So there's that in this regard as well. So that's kind of all of their own players of what they have to deal with. And then you also have to deal with the idea of all right, does Miami have an outside move? Because the interesting thing is, and I can't believe I'm bringing this up, Brian Scalabrine, he of calling the alleging Eric Spoelstra ordered the code red on Jason Tatum. Yep, the White Mamba himself, Brian Scalabrine from the Celtics broadcast in SiriusXM, he was basically going and saying, there's no way Miami's not going to be a player next year, that they're going to get somebody, that there's going to be some type of move that Miami's going to have that's going to make them relevant again. And it was interesting because I think I upset some Grizzlies fans, and I was, I'm kind of doing jokes on Twitter for Heat Twitter. I'm not doing it for Grizzlies Twitter. But I found the Taylor Jenkins news really interesting. And I know there's been a lot of hipster Grizzlies fans who are like, no, you guys don't understand. The Grizzlies haven't been that good. Cool. Here's the thing, though, dude. You just don't fire a coach with 9 games left in the season. You just don't. This isn't hockey. If this was hockey, you wouldn't blink twice at it. But you just don't do it in the NBA. It's very, very strange. And one has to wonder, with this whole ordeal, what the hell is going on in Memphis? They're not having a disaster. They just lost. They've lost a couple in a row. They just lost to the Lakers. They're 5th in the East. They're not out of the woods as far as the play-in is concerned. And then Ja Morant is in a situation where, yes, he does miss games, but he's still, looked upon as the heart of the team, the face of the team, even though maybe Jaren Jackson's having a better year than he is. But with all of the things that he has dealt with the injuries and the stuff, is there, and is there any realm of possibility that they are ready to move on from all of this, right? They already had and here's the thing with Ja Morant, right? Ja Morant had to deal with all he had to deal with this year. But then also remember that the Grizzlies were in a situation with the Jimmy Butler scenario where they did not pull the trigger on the Jimmy Butler trade because they didn't want to disgruntle Jimmy Butler. But it was made clear they did not want to go after Jimmy. They didn't want to bring in a disgruntled guy, but also that Jimmy really didn't want to go there. Now, would they have been willing to sign the extension? It seems no. It seems like they were going to look into him as a rental, and that seemed to be pretty much a deal breaker for any Jimmy Butler deal. But if you're Ja Morant and you see that, and everybody's kind of throwing your flowers now, Jaren Jackson's the dude, and is it a little De'Aaron Fox Sabonis-ish going on there in Memphis? They were the darling of everybody, then they got uber cocky, and then all hell kind of broke loose for their franchise, and now you fire your coach with 9 games left. And to me, there's only 3 reasons that happens. Either, and I don't really know the story behind it. I know that there's been some stuff that Ja's been frustrated with the offense this year, but I don't know if we got all quite the dirt yet. But even with Taylor Jenkins' shortcomings, it's all right, these happen because there's bad negotiations in contract extension talks, and maybe he wanted to get paid like a top-tier coach, and they think he's a mid-tier coach. So there's that. 2, your stars hate you. Memphis has dealt with this before, of course, with our boy David Fizdale and Marc Gasol. So you have that scenario of your stars hate you, and that's usually the biggest case. We had this last year with the Bucks. The Bucks had a very successful team. They still fired Adrian Griffin and hired Doc Rivers. And then the third is you got an Udoka situation and you were horny with the wrong person. I'm not accusing Taylor Jenkins being horny with the wrong person. I just want to be clear. But that's always 1/3 reason that has to be left out there. To be fired at a situation like this in the middle of the year. So one has to wonder, is Ja Morant gettable for any team next year? I know their GM has already come out and said no, because I believe was it Howard Beck, I think, who came out months ago and said, hey, you could be out there. People are saying Ja Morant. Okay, that didn't come from the Grizzlies side, clearly, because they came out very negatively about it. But that doesn't come from nowhere. So you have that. Then the Miami Heat also, if we're talking about whales that they can go get, impossible not to ignore Giannis Antetokounmpo. and the Milwaukee Bucks, who are now 6th in the Eastern Conference. And they, of course, have the looming scenario of Damian Lillard and everything that they're dealing with. Giannis Antetokounmpo, is there a possibility that he finally wants to get the hell out of Milwaukee? Because now everything really has been exhausted. There's no Middleton there anymore. Damian Lillard's future is in question. Brook Lopez, old as hell. Our move was Kuzma. Doc Rivers' voice annoys me. I don't know. But that could be there as well. And then I think the most common one that you guys have heard me bring up is Zion Williamson. All of these things are there to bring up to bring up a scenario where it's like, hey, we have to find ourselves that exit ramp as a Heat franchise. And maybe Scals knows, that the Heat are souping up for something. I don't know. He did have kooky claims last year of the Heat in Code Red. But for Miami to be in this scenario of like, oh, well, that's an interesting move that they can go make. I will say, I know one thing that's not going to be the case. None of this Jimmy Butler stuff is going to deter any player from wanting to come here just because of the rule. Maybe people don't want to come here because they don't think it's a ready contender. But as far as the city's concerned and, a franchise you'd want, if you're talking about Milwaukee, Memphis, New Orleans, and then you go to a city like Miami, I think like all three of those guys, you're telling me that they wouldn't be welcoming. I wanted to mention this too because Draymond Green and his podcast, he had like this weird thing where he was talking about, Jimmy Butler and and he actually brought up Giannis in the take because he was like, quite honestly, I don't think there should have been a million boos. Every year they said, are they bringing Dame? Are they bringing Giannis? Are they going to bring Jimmy Butler help Jimmy Butler bring him a team with a championship? And he said at a certain point, Jimmy is in year 14. He gave them 7 years. He didn't give him 7 years. He gave him 5 and like a dozen games. So he didn't give him 7 years. He also said something weird in this take where, let me see if I get the wording on this, but he said something like Jimmy had the option to leave in free agency. And I just like, one of the things that's going to drive me nuts on this whole ordeal is like, if we're going to say things, if Draymond Green, who is I think, very, is a fun media personality. I have nothing against Draymond Green being in the podcast game and saying wild shit. Like, that's fun, for the most part. But like when he says like, oh, Jimmy could have left in free agency. When was that? He could have left at the end of this year? That's when he could have left? Like, is that what he's referring to there? Because I'm trying to say, like, was there a time he thought in Jimmy's era that he could have left the Miami Heat and it would have been and there was a greener pasture somewhere? Because I'd love to know when that was. I'm a little unfamiliar about this whole era that he's talking about. Yeah, he said that this was what he had to say. He said Jimmy had the option to leave in free agency or go into free agency, and he opted to sign the extension and stay. And Draymond says this on his podcast, and I'm like, hold on, dude. Hold on. What? Okay, he could have gone into free agency this year, which he very clearly did not want to do, by the way. But if he's referring to some time in the Heat, I'd love to know when this time was. I'm confused by this. When was this scenario where Jimmy could have gone into free agency? When? I want to know. Does anybody have an article, a rumbling, and anything on that? Is he just hearing that? Oh, Jimmy could have left the Heat high and dry. He could have? When? When was that scenario? I've never heard of that. That seems like fiction. So, but he was making this whole point. It's like, I don't think there should have been a million boos. And it's funny because on the same week, you have Bobby Marks. I didn't get to react to this on the radio show this week, but Lord knows I would have. But Bobby Marks was like, I was embarrassed that Heat fans cheered Jimmy Butler. And now Draymond's like, and I honestly don't think that there should have been a million boos. And he's I'm like, well, okay, hold on one second. Can somebody tell me what the Heat fans' reaction was? Did they cheer or did they boo? Now, I was there, and I will tell you, and I think I told you on that reaction video that night, that I was surprised how much booing there was throughout the game on Jimmy Butler. Now, I think part of it was buoyed by the fact that Miami was kicking the Warriors' ass. And that kind of emboldened them to root on the team and cheer on the team and feel this. But, like, the cheering that Bobby Marks found so embarrassing, like, it was pretty minimal, dude. Like, it was not, like, I think everybody gave him his little salute, but to say that that's embarrassing is a little strange. I don't understand that. Like, it's almost like when you're the Heat fan here, you can't do anything right in that scenario because you're either a jerk because you booed or you're soft because you cheered. How about the Heat fan probably handled it exactly like they should have? They gave Jimmy his props. It was a pretty lukewarm tribute, but you knew that the Miami Heat even giving a tribute was a little bit of a relent on their part, that they didn't want to do it. And then when the game started, all bets are off. They booed. That's what you do to the opposing player. And it's okay. Nobody was disrespectful. The only person who was really disrespectful that night was Jimmy Butler, who didn't want to look any of his former teammates in the eye and walked off and didn't shake anybody's hand. And that, to me, was the only thing that was a sign of disrespect the entire night. That the only guy that he spoke to was who? Kevin Love and Terry Rozier and Alec Burks, who said hello to him. But, you know, Bam had said in this whole thing, you know, that I saw in Anthony Chang's that, you know, it is what it is. He wasn't too surprised by seeing that he went into this whole thing. He says, I'm not shocked. It is what it is. It's a business at the end of the day. He has a Golden State Warriors jersey on. We have a Heat jersey on. I don't take it personal. We're out there to do our jobs anyways. So if you don't want to speak, you don't want to speak. That's fine. We're going to go out here. We're going to compete, win or lose, and we move on. But it was noticeable. Like, even especially on the dichotomy of, like, Andrew Wiggins getting all the love that he did. Even, like, last night, Bam was going over and dapping up Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey at the game. Like, most of the time, it's pretty buddy-buddy in these things. That's why it was so noticeable in all of it. And it wasn't even just like a shake, not a shake before, not a glance, none of it, except for coming up and rubbing Kevin Love's nipples.